Hello everyone and welcome to another JavaScript mastery video. Today I have something interesting prepared for you. Today we are going to build a full React application from scratch. This application is going to use an API to actually display some data, and that data is going to be advice. Today we are building an advice app using Advice API. So what do we have right there? We have a nice motivational city type background, and then in there in the middle we have random advice. Some are going to be funny, some are going to be useful, but yeah, let's check it out. So never run a marathon in Crocs. Yeah, that's definitely advice, and yeah, you should never actually run a marathon in Crocs. Let's go for some more. In here we have some nice slide button animation right there, so let's check that out. Your smile could make someone's day. Don't forget to wear it. Okay, definitely. Make choices and don't look back. Okay, great. Try to pay at least one person a compliment every day. Okay, so far so good. All of this have been really useful. Cars are bad investment. Okay, who would have said? Great. Yeah, so basically we are going to build this today. This application is beginner friendly, so whether you're just starting with React or you already have some experience, you're going to find this really easy. We are going to go over the basics and you should have no trouble following along. And if you're an advanced React developer, you can also build this and just add it to your portfolio. For you advanced React developers, many more interesting videos are coming. We have 2 or 3 projects already prepared. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive right in. We are currently in an empty Visual Studio Code window. Right there, let's go ahead and open a folder. Right there inside of projects, I'm going to create a folder called, let's say, Advice Project, like that. And we're going to open it. Inside of there, we are going to open a terminal window. We can do that by going above and then view. And right there is terminal. Great. Let's extend it a bit. Clear the console, and now we can type npx create react app /. This means that the project is going to be created inside of the current directory being advice project. We can run that and we can wait about a minute or two and we'll be right back. Okay, great. Now our basic React boilerplate is installed and we are ready to go. Right there we have our src folder. Src folder has the most important thing when it comes to React. It's going to have our components, it's going to have our index.js, also the styles. Everything is going to be contained inside of this src folder. Since we have a lot of the files right there, what I like to do at the beginning is I like to delete it completely, because we don't need many of these files. So let's create a new one, src. And the only thing that we are going to need for now is the index.js. This is the file that every React application needs. Okay, so how is it going to look like? First, we need to import React from React. Great, we need that in all files that contain React components. But only for the index.js file, we also need React DOM from react-dom. We do this so that we can actually hook onto that element in which our whole React application is going to be contained in. We're going to see that in a moment. Just below, we are going to import app from /app. This is going to be our main component. It doesn't exist yet, but we are going to create it. And then below, we are going to write React DOM.render. First parameter is the component that we want to render, that is the app. And the second parameter is the element we want to hook onto. So let's check what that is. This is going to be interesting, especially for people who are new to React. So if we go into the public and then index.html, we have a lot of stuff right there. But the only thing that we are really concerned with is the body. More specifically, there is only one thing in the body. That one thing is something that you'll all seen, and it's a simple div that has an ID of root. So we need to target that div, and our whole React application is going to be contained inside of that div. So let's do that. Document that get element by ID, and we simply pass root. That's it. Our index.js file is good to go. Now let's create an application. So app.js with a capital A. And while we are here, let's also create an app.css because we are definitely going to need to use it. In React, most often you're also going to have a components folder and some more components and styles. But since this is a really simple application, we're going to be doing all of our code in app.js. So what are we going to have in there? Import React from React. And now we can create a basic class-based component. So class app extends React that component, of course the render and the return, in which we can write, for example, just h1 for now that says app. That's it. Of course, we need to return our components. So export default app. Okay, great. And do we need anything else in there? Let's just import the styles since we know that we are going to need to use them. So import /app.css. Okay, great. In this app component, we are going to have a state. So state is like a global object that contains all of the most important thing when it comes to that specific component. Right there, we are talking about the app component. So in there, what should our state have? Well, only one field, and that one field is going to be advice. So we are getting a string of advice and we are going to store it in here. Since this is a really simple object with no property, we can just write it like this. Great. Now comes the question on where and how are we actually going to call or make that GET request to get the API. If you remember how the final version looked like, some random advice is going to be fetched at the beginning. For that, we use a component did mount lifecycle method. So React has some sort of lifecycle method. Every component goes through a lifecycle. First, we have a render, then we have a component did mount, component did update, and then finally component will unmount. There are many of these lifecycle methods, but definitely the most important one is the component did mount. This executes exactly at the render of our component. So let's do a console.log in there, console log component did mount. And we are also going to import Axios. From Axios, we need to install it first. We are going to use that to make a GET request to this certain API. So let's install that. npm install --save Axios. Great, simple as that. While that installs, we can create a new terminal window right there by clicking this plus icon, or you can just wait for this dependency to be installed. And then in there, we can write npm start, which is just going to start our application. Now we can close our terminal because that's going to be done. And now our application should pop up in the browser. Our app is up and running on localhost 3000 right there. We know that because we can see this app right there, and that is coming directly from our JSX right there. And if everything is working correctly, we should also see the component did mount console log. So let's go back, open the console by right-clicking the page and then clicking inspect. And then finally in the console.log, we can see component did mount. Great. So right now what we need to do is, instead of that console log, we need to fetch the actual advice using Axios, and of course using the Advice API. So we can do that either here. So in here we can make a GET request, Axios.get. But we are going to need to call the fetch function 2 times on the component did mount as well as on the button click. So instead of creating it just here, we are going to create a separate class method called fetch advice like this, and it's going to be equal to an arrow function. Why don't we need the const right there, const fetch advice? Well, because this is a function inside of a class, and that makes it a method. A method simply means that it is a function that belongs to a class. That's it. So we have that right there, and now we are actually going to do Axios.get inside of the fetch advice. This is the official documentation of the Advice application or the Advice API, Advice Slip JSON API. There are a lot of possibilities. We can get the random advice, advice by ID, search for advice, and so on and so on. But we are going to use just this one simple method, which always returns a random advice. We need to make a GET request to this URL. We can actually check that in the browser. So if I click that, and now right there, we can see that we get back an object that has yet another object inside. And now there is the advice with the actual advice string and the slip ID, which is the ID of that specific advice. Okay, let's refresh to get another one. Okay, rule number 1, try not to die. Rule number 2, don't be a dick. Okay, this is definitely a funny one. But yeah, we are not interested in all of this. We just want to get back this, a string of a simple advice. So let's first try getting all of this into our console, into our application, and then we'll actually try to destructure it to get back only what we need. Inside of our application, we need to make a GET request to the specific URL, and that's going to be this one right there. I'm going to leave the link into the description, but you can also just type it right there, https api.adviceslip.com and then /advice. Using that then and that catch syntax, we can get the response how we like it. So that then and then that catch, just like this. Of course, we can use the that then and that catch syntax, but for simplicity of this video, we're just going to go for that then and that catch. First parameter to the callback function of that then is the response. And the first parameter to the callback function of a catch method is the error. So in either case, we are going to console log what we get back. So console log response and just below console log error. That's it. So now let's test it. Currently, we just have a function declaration right there, or rather a method declaration. We are never calling this function. So let's call it. What do you think? Where should we call it? Since we are going to need the data initially on the class render, we just want to do it in the component did mount. So we're going to call the function by calling this, that, and then fetch advice, because that's a method that belongs to this app class. If we do that and save it and go back to the application and close this, in our console, we do get our response. There are a lot of things there. We have the data, which contains the actual advice. Also, we have status text, headers, config, request. The only thing that we are really concerned with is the data. Let's try to fake an error. So instead of advice, let's call for advice C, for example, which shouldn't exist. And if we go back, we indeed do get a 404 not found error, and in there is our console.log. Great. Now we can turn that back into the advice, and we mentioned that we want to get response.data. So let's console log just that right now. Okay, we still didn't get the advice, we got the slip. So let's go one level deeper, that slip. And we still got an object, we still didn't get the advice. So let's go one level deeper into advice. And if we go back, we finally got back the advice. Never run a marathon in Crocs. Okay, definitely a good one. What I like to do right there, and what is generally considered a good practice, is destructuring. So we can destructure this advice and take it out from the response. So right there, we can do const. We say we want to get the advice, and then from response.data.slip. That's it. Now we don't have to console log all of this, we can just console log the advice. Let's see if that works. Great. A common regret in life is wishing one had the courage to be one's true self. Okay, definitely inspirational. So what do we want to do with this advice right now? Well, we'd want to display it right there in this H1, so advice right there. But you can see we get an error, advice is not defined. We don't have access to advice in this scope. It's only in this little scope of that then from line 15 to line 19. How do we get it out? Can we do something like this? Well, we cannot, because this belongs to the function, and then we need to do that then on this axios.get. So how are we going to do that? Well, for that specific purpose, we have the apps state. So this advice is currently empty. All that we need to do is populate it with actual advice. So we can say this that set state is going to be an object. We need to use this syntax to actually update state properties in class-based components. And then inside of there, we are going to say advice is equal to advice. In just basic plain JavaScript, there's a rule that if you have the property and the value all have the same name, you can just omit the latter. So you can just have advice. This means set the advice value, this one, to the advice property right there. That's it. And now we have access to this advice just by calling it this.state.advice. And what we may do is also destructure this. So we're just going to have advice const advice is equal to this.state. We just get it out from the this.state, so we can just call it advice. That should generally be it. Now we have access to this advice, it belongs to the state, and if we go back into our application, and we can see the advice right there. It is easy to sit up and take notice. What's difficult is getting up and taking action. Well, props to you. You're watching this video and creating this application with me. While you're at it, you can also smash that subscribe button, and let's move on further. Now we can start adding some structure. So instead of just having this h1, let's give it some divs so that we can actually style it properly. Okay, great. So first we are going to have a div with a class name of app. That's going to be our whole app right there. In between that, we're going to have another div that's going to have a class name of card. Inside of the card, we are going to have an h1, which is going to have advice in it. So we put advice in curly braces, and it is going to have a class name of heading. That's all that we need for now. Let's go back to the browser and check it out. Okay, currently nothing changed, so let's apply some styles. I'm going to open app.css on the side, and we are going to collapse this so we can see everything nicely. Okay, great. So let's start with applying the styles. Now you're going to see some boilerplate React styles that people often apply. So that's root, HTML, and the body. So we target all of these at once, and we set the margin and the padding to 0. That's just to remove some default margin or padding from the HTML and the body. We are also going to give it a height of 100 VH, which stands for vertical height. If you give it a vertical height of 100, it's going to take a full height of the monitor, and also box sizing of a border box. That's it. Now we can move on to styling the app. App represents our entire background, so we are going to give it a height of 100%, and now in there we need an image. We don't yet have an image, but let's add it. So in there, in the src, I'm going to create a new folder called images. And then inside of there, I'm going to copy the picture of a city, which is called city.jpg. It looks really nice, looks motivational, a crowded city right there. You can place any image you'd like. If you'd like to use this one, I'm going to leave the link into the description. Okay, so now we can say background, and we can specify the URL, and then say /images city. That's it. For this image to be visible, we still need to apply some more styles. So we're going to say background size of cover, as well as the background position of center. While we are here, we can also give it a display of flex, justify content to center, and align items to center. We use this to center the card inside of the app, both vertically and horizontally. We can also say text align center to align all the text on the page in the middle. Awesome, so with this out of the way, let's go take a look. Great, I mean our text is not visible yet and it's not in the card. Our image is too bright. When we have an image, a background image specifically, we want to darken it. We want to make it not stand out so much. So let's do that. To darken an image, we need to use linear gradient. Linear gradient accepts two color stops. So we can say that we want pitch black color for the first one. So it's 0, 0, 0. And we're going to give it an opacity of 0.3. Then we can add a second color, which is just going to be the first one copied. And we need to add a comma right there, and we should be good to go. If we go back and save, Great, there's our darkened image. We still cannot see the text, but let's add a card to make that more visible. That's going to be inside of the that card. We are going to give it a background color of white smoke. That's just some white color that's not like completely white. We're going to give it a width of 40% as well as the height of 20%. Just below that we need display flex and our standard justify content center and align items center to center the card both vertically and horizontally. Below that we need a flex direction column because we are going to have a button just below this H1. We currently don't have that, but we'll use that in a moment. So let's see how it looks. Okay, looks good enough. We have just this box right there. So let's style it a bit. Let's add some border radiuses, some shadows maybe, some paddings. Let's check it out. So let's add a border radius of 25 pixels as well as the 2% of padding. So padding 2%. Great. And let's add a box shadow of 10 pixels and 10 pixels. And we should be good to go with the card. Great, so this already looks much better. The text is clearly visible. We have nice border radiuses here. This shadow is not so good. You should never actually do like so large and so black shadow. But since this application by itself is ironic, and all of these advice are actually ironic, we can leave it like that. It adds to the character of the whole application. Now let's style the heading, our heading being the H1 element or the actual advice. So that heading. Inside of there, we are going to have a display of flex, align items of center, height of 580 pixels. I found that to be working best. And then let's see how it looks. Great, that's exactly how it looked. We just needed to apply these styles for when we actually add the button. Do you think we need to change the font? I'm going to go ahead, go to the Google Fonts, and I'll be back in 5 minutes, but for you that's going to be an instant. And we are back. This looks much better, much more believable. Some of life's best lessons are learned at the worst times. Great. We have this. I personally think this font looks much better. So what I did is I went to the Google Fonts, found a font that I like. For example, this Spartan font, and I click select this font. Right there, it's going to give you a link. You can copy this link, go to the index.html, and then just paste it just above the title right there. After you do that, you can copy the font family and paste that to the heading. So font family, heading right there, and that's going to change our styles. So let's go take a look one more time. That looks really good. It added to the value of this application. The thing that we're going to add next is the button. So right there we can say button, and then inside of there we are going to have a span. And inside of the span we can passive aggressively say give me advice, exclamation point. Since there is a lot of CSS code for just the button, I'm just going to copy it and give you the snippet of code in the description. You can just copy and paste it. If you'd like, you can go through it and see what it is, but I know that many of you don't feel like just retyping all the CSS, so that's why we are going to make the process a bit faster. So let me just paste that in there. Yeah, we have some keyframes with some rotations, but most importantly, these are the styles for our button right there. Just at the end, we are also going to add some media queries. So add media, only screen, and then max width. That's going to be, for example, 600 pixels. So for mobile devices. The only thing that we're going to say is that card, we're going to increase the width on mobile devices to, for example, 80%, and also increase the height to 30%. We can also do 40, but let's try 30 for now. Now we can close this CSS file and see how our application looks like. Okay, great, much better. We have this button right there. You can see this slight little animation. Great. Enjoy a little nonsense now and then. Okay, that's definitely good advice. You sometimes need to just chill a bit and have some fun. And we want to display a new advice, a new piece of advice. So how do we do that? This is a great exercise for you. So right now you can pause the video and see how you would implement this feature on your own. So what we need to do is call this fetch advice function on the button click. Let me show you how to do that. So right there, on click, we can add an on click property to the button and we can say this.fetch advice. Is that it? Is it really it? So will this work? Will this actually fetch the advice on each button click? Let's go back to our application and let's take a look. Identify sources of happiness. Yeah, that's definitely great. So let's click it. And it actually works. Just with one simple property, now we can actually fetch more and more advice. Okay, great. Now that we are done building our application, the only thing left to do is to actually deploy it so you can send the link to your friends or just showcase it on your portfolio as a live served version. So what we need to do is go to GitHub. If you already don't have a GitHub account, I would greatly suggest you to create one. There you will be able to showcase all of your projects. If you're looking for a job, it's great to have a GitHub account because your employers can see that you're actually building projects and working on becoming a developer. What you need to do right now is to create an account if you already don't have one. If you do, just log in. And then on the top right corner, there you'll have this plus icon. You can click on it and create a new repository. Right there, you can enter a repository name, for example, Advice App React, something like that, and you can create a repository. There, we'll be greeted with a series of steps that we need to do to publish our application. So, we need to first add everything, then we have to commit it, remote add origin. This means that we need to connect our project with this actual repository online, and then we need to push to the master branch. So how do we do this? It's pretty simple. We go back to our application and in here we'll just close our terminal with Control-C and let's clear our console. So in there we can say get init, which is going to initialize empty repository right there, and you can go ahead and do git add dot. This is going to add all the files to our git repository. Then we need to run git commit -m, and then in here you specify the message. For example, you can say initial commit. And then you can go ahead and go back to the browser and copy this git remote add origin and paste it right there, like this. For me, it currently won't work because I already have this running. And then finally, you can say git push u origin master. Again, just copy the line right there. Awesome, so that's it. That's the only thing that you have to do. Now the code should be live on the branch master. Let's go ahead and check it out. Right there, that's it. This is the code for our application, live, pushed to the GitHub. This is great. Also feel free to leave some stars, or if you want to just copy the code, you can fork the repository right there. It greatly helps with the channel. I'll leave the link down below so you can actually reference to the code and just leave a star there. Let's make this project great as the chat application that we provided recently. Awesome. So now that we have this ready, you can go to the Netlify. Netlify is the hosting website. So you can create an account there by just clicking login. And I suggest you log in with GitHub. Once you do that, you can click new site from Git right there. And you can connect your GitHub account. After you do that, you can find your application, for example, Advice app right there. Click on it and just click deploy site. That's going to be it. Site deployment in progress. You're going to get some random domain name, but that's okay. And finally, after a few minutes, your app should be up and running right there. You'll see deploys for eloquent color right there for me. For you, it's going to be something different. We can click on the link and the website should open. Right there, don't eat non-snow colored snow. That's a great one. So that's it, the whole deployment process in less than 5 minutes. Awesome. That's it. It looks simple, but we've done a few things. We used life cycles, we used state. We created a method called fetchAdvice, which fetches real data from the real Advice API. Then we get the advice, we destructure it and set it to the state. Okay, never cut your own fringe. Don't promise what you can't deliver. That's definitely a good one. Why wait until Valentine's Day for a romantic gesture? Okay, that's a good one. That's definitely useful. So for all of you who have a partner, just go ahead and just create a nice gesture. This was a project aimed more towards beginners and people who are new to React. But if you're already familiar with React, don't worry. On this channel, we'll do many more projects. We have real-time chat application using socket.io as well as the YouTube clone application, both built in React. We are also starting with some more React projects as well as the MERN stack project. So just stay tuned and subscribe if that's something that you want to learn. That would be it for this video. Thank you so much. If you like it, feel free to subscribe and see you in the next one.